Hi. I am here a little early today for my Friday freebie, and I am happy to be here. It's going to be kind of an interesting day because I really don't know what to expect from what we're going to be doing today. I am going to be looking for a substitute for my brushes that have been my go-to solid favorites for a lot of years, and those are the Loew Cornell red stripe brushes. These Loew Cornells are synthetic, and as you can see, let's see if I put it up against the camera here, hopefully you can see that the tip is sort of an elongated round. These are considered round brushes. I've always taken issue with that because they're pointy. They have a point on them, some of them more so than others. When they are described as a long round, generally it means that the tip is more elongated. And you'll find various versions of this formation in brushes. The Princeton Velvet Touches, the long rounds, have similar appearance. Maybe I'll show you my tabletop so that you can get a little bit better view of this. Whoops, I guess I can get rid of that on the screen. And and here I am live. You're seeing all kinds of comments and things on the screen. Hello to those of you who are here with me live. I'm so happy you were able to join. But this is the Loew Cornell. This is the red stripe brush that I've been so fond of for years. This is a number 10. This is a number 14. And this is another elongated brand. It's even more elongated than the Loew Cornell, and this is the Princeton Velvet Touch. These brushes, this is the 12 in the Princeton Velvet Touch. They all have quite a point on them, which can make them a really nice brush to have in your hand if you want to go a long way and still have the ability to lift your brush up to the point and have the ability to do detail. In general, I'll tell you that what you want to try to do is you want to try to have a brush in your hand that will go as far as can be allowed. And what does that mean? Well, Pamela, I'm glad you are liking my video. Thank you. What does it mean when it will allow you to go as far as you can? You know, a small brush, a tiny brush, something like this, you might think this is your detail brush, something that's very tiny. This is a very fine size 4 Isabey. And it's all well and good to use these small brushes for tiny little passages. But the problem is that if you have a brush like this in your hand versus a brush like this, you are very limited, and you're going to have to reload this small brush much more frequently than you will this large brush. So my preference is to always have as large a brush in my hand as I can to achieve that which I'm trying to achieve at any given moment. So I like to be working generally with size 8, 10, 12, sometimes 14 brushes, maybe going down to a 6. But if I can get a 6 with a really nice fine point, I'm going to prefer that to a 4 or a 2. So that's kind of why I tend to like these brushes that have a little bit of a point to them. I'm going to today take a moment to do some test driving of some alternatives to these Loew Cornell brushes. They're wonderful brushes. These synthetic bristles can be used both with acrylic and watercolor, even oil, but once they are used in oil, you would never go back to using them in water media. But the nice thing about these is they do have that versatility of being used in whatever medium you'd like to. Generally what I do is I'll use them as a watercolor brush until they get worn. And then when the bristles toward the end here get a little bit frayed, what I'll do is then I'll end up using them for my acrylics. And then I can, sort of get a second life out of them. So again, another reason that I like these. So what I'm trying to do today is find a synthetic substitute for my Loew Cornell brushes, and so we'll do a little testing together and we'll kind of see how that works out. If you guys have any questions, let's see if I can turn this down. If you guys have any questions for me, I would really be interested in what your questions might be about maybe the brushes that you have in your collection. Maybe you found a substitute that you really like maybe you were never able to get your hands on a Loew Cornell brush, or maybe you don't even know what the heck I'm talking about. These are the ones that I recommend and have linked to on my supply list. And so this is why I'm looking for a substitute, because now that they are unavailable to my students and to me, I feel kind of an obligation to have another recommendation that I can offer, especially for people who are just starting out and just buying their equipment. So I've got some watercolor paper here. It is not my fine arches paper. Just so you know, it's kind of my practice paper that I use for things that like this, where I just want to put some paint on the paper and maybe test something other than the capacity of my paper to withstand abuse. So what I thought I would do today is test two different brands. This one brand is a Princeton Aqua Elite, and it looks it's a black handle. This is a number 8 round. This Aqua Elite is a synthetic, and when I put it next to the Loew Cornell, the bristles are slightly shorter, not a whole lot shorter, but slightly, but the tip is pretty similar. And so I think this will be an interesting brush to try. For the Princeton silver brush, I see Betsy mentioned, I think they're a really good brush, but to me, they mimic a sable much more than a synthetic. And we can talk about that difference if you're interested. I do use my fine sables. I have some sable brushes, and I do have some Princeton silver brushes. But I have found that they are very soft, and that's not such a bad thing, but it's not a good thing if you're trying to do lifting and some of the techniques that I tend to find myself using my synthetic brushes for. Have you found that to be true, Betsy? Have you found them to be a pretty soft brush? I'd be interested. When you first get a brush, you'll quite frequently notice that they are like rock solid. And what that is they've usually been treated with some gum arabic or something that's a little bit sticky, so that they will keep their bristles in place. A lot of these brushes come with little plastic covers on them, and I would suggest that you never store them with these plastic covers. Once they come off, let them stay off. The problem is that if you yes, Betsy just uses her silver brushes for just painting, not lifting. And that's because they're so soft. But the problem with putting these plastic covers back on is that you can potentially force a bristle back on itself and forever have it splayed out to the side. And I'm kind of wondering if that isn't what happened to this little brush, because I'm seeing a couple of stray hairs out here that don't really want to go back with the rest of the pack. So I'm just pulling them out because I don't want them to be leaving a mark that's incidental that I don't particularly care for. Okay, so I've got the Masters the Princeton Aqua Elite, and for this one I have a Master's Touch round. Now this is, look at how much shorter that bristle is. It is a lot shorter, maybe a full 1/4 of an inch shorter than the Loew Cornell 8. So that could potentially mean that it's going to exhaust a little bit more quickly. It may not be able to hold as much. And the point looks pretty similar. So in that way, maybe I'll be able to mimic some of the action from my Loew Cornell, but I do feel as if it looks like it's pretty much shorter. This Master's Touch, the reason I got it is because it's available at the big box store here locally, Hobby Lobby. And I think, sometimes we want to be able to just run up to the store with a 50% off coupon and grab a brush. So I thought it might be fun to see if any of the brushes up at our local Hobby Lobby might work for us. So this one looked potentially promising, and it was 50% off, I have to admit. So I thought, well, maybe I could try that one too today. So I'm going to try the number 8s. I'm going to try the Princeton Aqua Elite, the Master's Touch Round, and I'm going to try the Loew Cornell 8 and just kind of compare and contrast a little bit. I'll get some of these weapons off of the tabletop here, and we'll see how this number 8 does. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I really like to make sure that I'm using as large a brush as possible when I'm painting, and it just allows me to go a little bit further between reloading. It's kind of nice. You can just keep going, and timing is everything in watercolor, and so being able to keep on trucking without having to reload your brush can be a really nice thing. I've got some pink here on my palette just from a previous painting outing. So maybe I'll just keep going with this, and I will load my brushes, all of them, from this same puddle. And I'll just kind of load them all up so they all have kind of equal saturation. And I think what I will do is just kind of go here and see what we can do. If I just drag this across the paper, all 3 of them at the same time, can I do that? Am I coordinated enough? I don't know, maybe I'll just do it one at a time. If I drag this across the paper, if I start out with the belly of the brush and just keep on going, keep on going, keep on going, and lift. Okay, that one lasted the whole page. This is the Master's Touch Round number 8. I'm going to go with the belly of the brush here. And it seems to be exhausting itself a little bit. And yet I still can get a nice fine line. So I do feel as if this brush, this Loew Cornell brush, was able to hold more than the Master's Touch did, but I still was able to get a nice little mark here at the end when I lift it up. So let's try this Princeton round. I'm going to start out here, and it's going and going and going. I don't get the sense that it's exhausting quite as much. And let's see what kind of a, yeah, I feel like of these two, the Princeton Aqua Elite actually mimicked this Loew Cornell brush a little bit better in terms of a long linear form like this. Let's see what kind of marks we can make. If I use my number 8 Loew Cornell, I can do some really nice little detail marks here. I can dot, 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 very small dots. I can make bigger dots, all with the same brush in my hand. I can spatter with it. It releases pretty easily. So all of those from the Loew Cornell, and I'll put that here. That's that mark. With the Princeton, let's go in the same order. With the Master's Touch number 8, I'm able to get some nice light marks, but it's interesting. I just don't feel like it's letting go of as much paint. It's just my own perception, but it's like it wants to hang on to the paint a little bit more than the Loew Cornell does. Let's try to make some little marks here. Ooh, those are nice little marks. I can make some very fine little marks with the tip. What if I try to make bigger marks? That's nice. I like it. And maybe even bigger. Okay, so I've made some nice varied marks with the tip of this brush. That's nice. Let's see how it does in terms of spattering. It doesn't seem to like to release it quite as easily, which could be a good thing. I didn't get as many varied droplets out of this brush in terms of size, and I think that's because it just wanted to hang on to those droplets a little bit more. It also sort of verifies that sense that I had when I was making my little marks over here, that it just is a thirstier brush by nature and wanted to kind of grip onto the water and the pigment a little bit more than the bristles in this Loew Cornell. So let's try this Aqua Elite round. Let's see what kind of a linear. Oh, now this is kind of releasing the water and the pigment a little bit more easily. I'm really liking the way that's letting go and making marks there. That's really nice. Let's try making some varied marks with the tip. This is nice, tiny little marks. I'm liking those. If I want to go a little bit bigger, yep, making nice little pounced marks. What about even bigger? Let's see if I can. Yeah, I can make even bigger little splotches there. And let's test the spatter capacity of this. Oh yeah, I'm getting some more variation in that spatter, and it doesn't seem like I'm having to work as hard to get it off of the brush. So I think if I were to compare these two brushes with my Loew Cornell, which has long been my favorite, I would say that for me, the Aqua Elite might be the better choice. I think this Master's Touch is okay. Let's try to do a wash with these brushes and see how they perform. Maybe that will be a little bit different performance test. So if I put my paper on a slight tilt, and I'll just hold it on a slight tilt here, and I try to come down and try to make a nice smooth wash, kind of exhausting the brush as I go. That does this pretty much performs as I would expect it. It's pretty good for that. Because it's synthetic, it will sometimes leave those striations in the wash that if you're using a softer brush, say a Sable or the Velvet Touch, or as the Princeton Silver that Betsy mentioned, those are all softer, and they will be much less likely to leave those striations in a wash such as that. Let's try this one that I got at Hobby Lobby, which is the Master's Touch number 8, and I've just loaded it as much as I can in my wet puddle over here, and I'm going to see how it does with a wash. This is on a slight tilt. It's exhausting itself already. It's gone about half the distance that the Loew Cornell did. And you can see that it's just this brush released a little bit more uniformly and was able to create a much better gradation. This seemed to release a lot up front and then get exhausted a little bit more quickly. And again, this is the one I got from Hobby Lobby. This is the Master's Touch Round. It's a synthetic. Let's load the Aqua Elite by Princeton. And let's try that one and see how it does. I've loaded it to the gills, and I'm going to just see what I can do. Trying to use the same brush approach. This is not exhausting as much as the previous, and it appears to be a really good comparison in terms of performance with the Loew Cornell. So today for me, I have to say that in this number 8 category, the Princeton Aqua Elite, I think, is turning out to be the better substitute. These are available online and on Amazon. And so if you are looking to try to find a substitute for your Loew Cornell brushes, I might encourage you to think about checking out this Aqua Elite. At least in the number 8, I feel like it's a nice substitute. And I would suspect that since it performed in the number 8, that we might expect something similar in a different size too. And let's just see if that holds true. I got the number 10 in the Aqua Elite, and I have a number 10 in the Loew Cornell. And let's see, do I have the number 10? In order to be a true experiment, you kind of have to do apples to apples. But I'm afraid maybe I didn't find the number 10 in the Hobby Lobby brush. I think they were out. I think they had limited. So let's try a different size. Let's try, oh, here it is. Okay, yes, I did find it. Good. Okay, so here is the Master's Touch. It's advertised as acrylic and watercolor. And I'll take it out of its packaging here. So these will all be number 10 brushes. And so let's try the same tests with these number 10s. So you can see just in looking at them that the Loew Cornell number 10 is pretty long. The Princeton Aqua Elite is, looks like maybe almost 1/4 of an inch shorter in the bristle. And the Master's Touch is even slightly shorter than the Aqua Elite. So I think we can predict that the shorter the bristle, the less pigment and water it's going to hold. I think that's a pretty fair presumption. And I'm just going to rinse these brushes out to get any sort of residue from the packaging out of their bristles. And let's load them up with some paint and see how they do. The Loew Cornell, this is number 10 again. I'll make this a violet. And I'm going to try our single brush and see how it does. I'm going to press down into the belly and go across the page, and I'll bet you I'm going to just turn it around and see how far I can take it before it exhausts itself. All right, so that's how long it took me to exhaust the Loew Cornell. Let's see how this Princeton Aqua Elite does in terms of exhaustion. I'm going to put it down in the belly, come across, and it's doing well. It's rounding the corner well. I'm going to just kind of come along, and look at that. It is keeping up very well with the Loew Cornell, maybe even going a little bit further. That's wonderful. Okay, and we'll start with the Master's Touch here. Master's Touch number 10. We'll see how far this one goes. To the belly of the brush, coming around. Uh-oh. How's it doing? Oh, it did better. It did much better. So wow, I guess maybe the fact that this is a little bit thicker bristle allowed it to, or a thicker brush, it's a bigger brush, maybe it allowed it to hold more pigment and be more similar in its performance with these other brushes. That's great. So this cheaper brush from Master's Touch at Hobby Lobby actually did pretty well. Let's see what kind of marks we can make with these guys. Again, we've got nice little fine points on this Loew Cornell, which has always been a strength of that brush. Again, a little bigger yet. And maybe a little bigger yet, because it's a bigger brush. All right, so then if we go with the Princeton Aqua Elite, we can also get some fine little marks, getting bigger, getting even bigger. That's a nice mark there, and maybe even bigger. All right, so I almost prefer the marks that were made by this Princeton Aqua Elite to the ones from my old favorite. Now, isn't that interesting? Okay, so let's try with this cheap brush from Hobby Lobby. Let's see what, yes, I can get a very fine mark there. And I can get bigger. And even bigger. And even bigger. I really like these marks too. So there you go. I think these two brushes did very well in both categories in the number 10 size, competing with Loew Cornell. So now I guess what we'll do is we'll try the wash test and see what happens. See what comes out in the wash. Ha! All right, here we go. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to just see how far this brush will go. Already exhausting itself, and yeah, pretty exhausted at that point. So now this is the Princeton Aqua Elite. How far is this going? Quite a ways. I think it's even maybe lasting a little bit longer than the Loew Cornell did. Yay! This is a good sign. Look at that. It's still laying down pigment. That's great. Okay, let's try this last contender and see how it fares. This is the Master's Touch number 10. Uh-oh, already exhausting itself. Not quite as thirsty, and yeah, I would say that the best performer of all of them was the Aqua Elite. But this brush, for the price, didn't do badly, and it is available locally, this Master's Touch. It's available from Hobby Lobby. So I would say that all in all, this Aqua Elite is probably going to be what I recommend. I think it's a really nice brush. It feels good in my hand. It's not too long. Some of these brushes that are formulated for oil painters and the like get a little bit long. But I think all in all, for me today, the Aqua Elite is going to turn out to be the one that I end up recommending. I think the reasons are, pretty apparent. I want to be able to have a brush that can make varied marks, that can go a long way, that has a fine tip, that can allow me to lift it and use it for more detailed little sections without having to change brushes. And the more I can do with one brush in my hand, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So I hope this is of help to you too. I'll try to put a link in the description of this video so that you can shop for some Aqua Elite brushes if that would be your desire. You can also think about maybe heading up to Hobby Lobby and looking for a 50% off brush if you feel like the Master's Touch might be an improvement over what you've been using. It's always nice to know a little bit about the equipment you're buying before you buy it. Do you have any questions, any of you, for me about the brushes you might have, or when to use certain brushes in your collection? If you do, just put it in the comments here real quickly before we close. I am looking forward to May here in Myrtle Beach. The weather is just turning beautiful, and it's so nice to be here. And I've been thinking that it might be time to open up my studio again for those people who might be interested in in-person classes. So I'm going to be doing some May mentoring sessions here, where we'll open up and I'll encourage you to bring your work and we'll work on it together. And I think it's always fun to help people figure out how to finish their work and to maybe help you just sort of with ideas of how to problem solve some of the difficulties you might be having. Before I sign off, Beth has a question about the Aqua Elite and would it lift similarly to the Loew Cornell. When you say lift, I'm presuming that you're meaning going back in and lifting out color. I don't normally use a round brush for that, but sometimes I do if that happens to be what's in my hand. So I guess we could test that capacity to get in there and lift out a little something. And I can do that by showing you my tabletop again. This is the Princeton Aqua Elite Wash. If I were to come in here with some clean water on my brush and try to just lift out something, it's going to be better at lifting, I predict, than a real soft sable might be. But it still, some of these colors I'm using were staining too. But yeah, I think it could be the sort of thing where you could get in there and use it. The tip is pretty pointed though, and I find that pointy tips are not necessarily the best lifters. I tend to find that the brushes for me that are most effective for lifting are flats, and I can get in there and I can just get in there and do it in many fewer strokes usually if I have a flat brush to do my lifting with. And I think it's because all of the bristles hit at one time rather than on a brush like this where you're just hitting a few of the bristles at any given time. So I think for lifting, I would suggest using a flat brush or something of that sort just to help you lift more effectively. You're welcome, Beth. And you're so welcome, all of you, for any of the things that I bring your way. I'm always so happy to just share the journey with you guys and inform you of what's going on. You know, we're we're constantly in evolution, all of us, including me. I'm having to find new brushes, and it's part of the fun, right? Part of the fun is learning the new stuff, getting the new stuff, testing it out, and just playing around with our equipment and our materials. So get out there, get your brushes wet, with whatever kind of brush you have. Keep them wet, keep painting, and think about joining me for a class, whether it's in person or whether it's online. I'm so happy to meet all of you in my classes. You keep me feeling as if I'm not isolated here in my little studio from day to day. And I thank you so much for watching today. Take care, everybody, and I will see you next Friday.